let's talk about the neutral site AFC Championship game. Based on the way I'm reading it, you tell me if I'm reading this correctly, that the only way that the Chiefs will have a neutral site AFC Championship game unless they're taking on the winner of the AFC South or any of the teams that would make it as a wild card. If it's Cincinnati or if it's Buffalo, they're going to end up having to go to a neutral site to play an AFC Championship game. And if the Bills and Bengals play one another in an AFC Championship game, that will be in either Buffalo or Cincinnati, depending on the results, I would imagine, of this weekend's contests and where these teams wind up in the standings with an actual two teams that have an actual same number of games being played in the regular season, right? Did I get that right, Tom?
Well, let's start with the clean scenarios.
Yes.
At this point, I'm rooting just for all of our sanity. If the Bills win and the Chiefs lose this weekend, Bills get the 1 seed. They're got the first round bye. AFC Championship game between Bills Chiefs would be in Buffalo. Flip that around. Chiefs win. Bills lose. Chiefs get all the normal benefits of the number 1 seed, including hosting the AFC Championship game. If they both win, that's where, based upon the possibility they could have finished with the same record, even though they played an uneven number of games, that could go to a neutral site AFC Championship game. There also are, again, so there's scenarios here where you could have that matchup being Kansas City, Buffalo, or at a neutral site. There's also one scenario where the Bengals and Chiefs would be at a neutral site. That only happens if, brace yourself, the Raiders beat the Chiefs, the Patriots beat the Bills, the Bengals beat the Ravens, by which then the Bengals end up in the number 2 seed, and they are a half game back of the Chiefs. That would trigger a neutral site AFC Championship game if it's the Chiefs against the Bengals. Every other scenario where it's the Chiefs versus the Bengals, that's going to be in Kansas City. And then, yes, you're right. Any of those other games with the lower-seeded teams, the neutral site doesn't come into play. It would be normal. And, again, based on the past couple of years, you'd say there's a decent chance that somebody seeded 4 through 7 may make all this moot by the time we get to that last weekend in January.
All right. And then there's the thorny issue of where's the neutral site. Any idea what they're talking about right now?
They're still, as of, when we were gathering information last night, they were still very much going through the logistics. I mean, you have to think through a lot of different things here. One being what stadiums are available. And our colleague Ian Rappaport tweeted earlier today that the Lions Stadium, for instance, Ford Field, which would be a natural, middle ground for a potential game, is not available because they're replacing their turf because they could make the playoffs depending on the results this weekend, but they, cannot host a playoff game. So if they were already planning to rip the turf out, that's going to take a while. So that building is not available. Indianapolis, you would think, makes sense. Atlanta makes sense. They also have not taken off the table, from what I'm told, the possibility a neutral site could be an outdoor stadium. All three of the teams impacted here, between the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, they're all outdoor teams. Cold weather teams, certainly in Cincinnati and Buffalo, and certain times of year in Kansas City as well. So it would not be completely out of the realm of possibility that, and I'm not saying that this has been discussed as a possibility, but can you imagine an AFC Championship game at Lambeau Field or a setting like that?
Oh my
That's
goodness.
not, completely off the table either. You also got to figure out, all these big events, normally you've got some type of lead time and you know what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
In a neutral site with flights and hotel rooms for 2 fan bases and everything else, there's a lot that they have to explore besides just whether or not the stadium's available.
Well, that's why you'd have to choose a possible spot now, right? And then block off hotel rooms now that you either, you tell them, hey, what would the cancellation fee be, right? and you'd block it off now, and then you'd have to really turn the machines on, to use the Trading Places phrase, the minute the divisional playoffs are over. And then you'd have to send somebody to a town, or you wouldn't, and you'd cancel all those plans. And I just find it fascinating, and this is going to be a conversation I think that we're going to have later on in this program, is that, these teams that are all involved are all outdoor teams. Shouldn't this game be played outdoors? Or do you just do it like a Super Bowl and just say weather is a non-factor, let's throw them in somewhere indoors? And can't Detroit just, push back the whole like turf replacement?
Yeah,
well, I wouldn't Detroit want to host? Wouldn't the city want to host an AFC Championship game?
You ever tried to reschedule your carpet guy, Rich? It's just a big process. You got to book those guys on months in advance. It takes a while. Selfishly, as somebody who may or may not be at that game, I kind of root that it's in a place like New Orleans and not in in Green Bay, where I really should check and see if the hotel rooms have already been jacked up from $89 a night to $900 a night. That'll give us a pretty good indication if anything's being considered there.
You want to know? You want to know something? By the way, you want to know something that would be totally wild? Okay, and I'll just throw it out here. Like if you want to play outdoors, okay, and let's just say don't you want to play somewhere that would be easy for the fan bases to get to, right? Like, so you'd have to play outdoors. Like, so why not Chicago if it's Kansas City versus Cincinnati, right? Or why not? How about this one? If it's Buffalo and it's Cincinnati, they would play in their respective spots.
New England.
You send Buffalo fans to New England if it's them versus.
No, I want it indoors in Indy.
Right.
I want a Super Bowl type atmosphere because I want to see these teams with amazing offenses. I want to see a high-scoring game.
So, you'd have to choose a place that is geographically sound for the fan bases to get to, wouldn't you? Right, Tom?
Right, you would think so, and that's where I'm saying not that Green Bay would be considered because it's a really hard place. There's not direct flights from anywhere there outside of, I believe, Minneapolis, Chicago, and maybe one other place.
Right.
But let's also remember this. Like, if we get through the weekend, there's a bunch of different scenarios here where there is no neutral site game. I mean, if Kansas City wins and Buffalo loses, there's no neutral site. If Bills win and the Chiefs lose, there is no neutral site. There's a lot of different versions of this. I would certainly imagine that they're, depending, again, how this vote goes, let's get by the vote as well and see whether or not this all ends up passing. But if it does, you may get to Monday and this was all a lot of work for no particular reason. But honestly, I do give credit to people for trying to come up with creative solutions to this, even if some of the teams, namely the Bengals, are not real thrilled with the creativity right now.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.